Welcome, I'm Mark, and today we're going to set up our development environment so we're able to do some real programming. Let's get started with our learning outcomes. Today we're going to learn how to set up GitHub and GitHub Desktop, set up Visual Studio Code, set up GitHub CoPilot within Visual Studio Code. We'll get started by heading to GitHub. Let's get started by setting up a GitHub account. If you do not already have one, easily enter your email address, sign up, and follow the steps. Once we've created our account, we can then get GitHub Desktop. Now we have GitHub and GitHub Desktop linked together. Alright, now we're going to get Visual Studio Code. So you can either Google for this or here's the download link. I'll include this in the description. And for me, I'm downloading on Windows. I generally click all these buttons so that it's easier to get stuff loaded into Visual Studio Code. And now we have Visual Studio Code installed. Now that we've got GitHub, we have GitHub Desktop installed, and we have Visual Studio Code installed, let's get CoPilot. Now, CoPilot does cost money. You do get a 30-day free trial. Once you log into GitHub, it's clicking your name in your profile in the top corner. You go into your CoPilot, and you should be presented with this option for the monthly plan or annual plan. Proceeding through that, you will have to give it some information, as well as probably give it a credit card to bill after your trial is over. Once we've subscribed, then we can go back over to Visual Studio Code. We can then look for CoPilot. We can easily install GitHub CoPilot here. And I also do recommend it looks like it auto installs the chat now, which is a good feature. While we're here, one of the more popular languages to program in is Python. So I would recommend go ahead and installing Python here. Now this is just the extension. This will not install Python for you. We will install that separately. We're going to go ahead and install Python. So if you head to python.org/downloads, you can download for Windows, which is my path. If you have a different operating system, obviously you have other options. Now I like to add path for Python. That way it just makes it easier whenever you're in Command Shell or PowerShell to make sure you're able to access Python. So it does recommend you disable path length limit. So go ahead and do that. All right, and now we have that installed. All right, now that we've got everything installed, we are going to make a repository. We're just going to call this test repository. So just test. We're going to choose git ignore, and we're going to type py to get quickly to Python. That way it ignores some of the Python files. That's going to be more important if you had a larger project. For a small project, it's not a big deal, but it's just good practice. We're going to publish this to our GitHub account so that we now have a version of that pushed up into the cloud. Generally, you want to keep that private especially until you're ready to allow it to be public. That way you don't accidentally send, as you're in development, some sort of secret up or something of that nature that you don't want to expose. It gives you a chance to come over it before that happens. Now that we've created that, we have the option to open in Visual Studio Code. And yes, I trust this. And now we are in. So some things to think about here. So let's just create a new file. We're just going to call this hello.py. And it pops up saying, hey, hit Control I to ask GitHub CoPilot to do something. Make me a hello world. Now, I haven't actually logged into this at all, so I'm curious if this is going to just work. In fact, it is. Generally with GitHub, and maybe it's signed me in from sign up for free trial. Generally, I make you log in for that, but for whatever reason, that's not the case this time for me. So this is where we're at. Let's get that there. So from inside here, if you've got Python installed, there are some commands I always recommend doing at the very start, and that is create environment. So how I did that, I clicked up here. There's shortcuts for this. You can just hit the little caret. This is recently for me, but if it wasn't, you can create environment is what we're looking for under Python. Create environment, and we're going to use venv. Comes with Python, and it's going to say, okay, which version do you want to make this off of? If we had a requirements.txt in this folder, or requirements.txt basically tells it what library to load with it. It would actually prompt and say, go ahead and make the virtual environment and include the requirements.txt. In this scenario, we don't need to do that. So then all you really want to do after that is just verify that that's what we're using. So select interpreter, and you can see we can use basically our Windows install and then also this install. And the reason for this is if you have any specific library versions, it keeps it all specific to this folder in this area, so that you don't have to worry about overall Python on your PC having conflicts by having a different version installed or upgrading a version for a different project. Certain things do break across versions, so this keeps you locked in place. Once we have all that set up, then we should just be able to hit start here. You can see down here in the terminal, it ran. This is just a simple application. We got hello world. Over on the side here, we have GitHub chat. So this is where we can ask it questions. I want to ask my name, something of that nature. We to get that, and then we can apply an editor. You can see that now it is going to say hello world and then ask what is your name and then print it. So down here we can see, sure enough, go ahead and enter Mark. Hello Mark. So there we are. We are now actually using CoPilot to help us do this. And also I did notice it did auto log me into one of my other accounts for this. I see this this is an account that I actually have CoPilot signed up for. If you don't already have that, it likely will ask you to log in before you can use CoPilot. Not a big deal. You just log in inside of Visual Studio to CoPilot using your GitHub credentials after you subscribed or took the trial, and you'd be good to go. Now that we finished up what we want to do inside of Visual Studio, we've got changes that we want to save for our project. We head back over to GitHub Desktop, and we could see it realized that, hey, we had a file change in our project. Down here we can say, kind of label the commit here. So if we say initial program, some stuff changed, and I can commit to main. And that locally is going to say, hey, we're ready to commit this, and then push to origin will actually push it to the cloud so that we can then see that. And if we need be, we can click this view in GitHub, and we can see now our file's up here. We can see we just did that change to it. Best practices generally, as you make changes, you're going to make a new branch and then merge those branches in, but that'll be a different video. This will get started, and as a single developer, you can be on your way and you can see changes as they come through on you can keep a commit history and compare that, even if you're straight up sending it all to main. But I do highly recommend you make branches as you add new features and whatnot, just to keep things separated and easily trackable. So now we've come to the end of the video. Today we went over setting up GitHub account and GitHub Desktop, setting up Visual Studio Code, setting up CoPilot within that, also setting up Python, not listed here. And then we made a small little program and pushed those changes to our GitHub repository. Thank you all for watching.